Welcome to the Wellfuel Podcast, your spot for everything gut health, detox, hormones, a healthy home, mold, and everything in between. I'm your host, Isabel Smith. I'm an integrative and functional registered dietitian and the founder of Isabel Smith Nutrition.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wellfuel Podcast. I'm your host today, Sydney Flippo, one of the dietitians on Team ISN, and I am super excited to be chatting today about weight gain post mold exposure. So we get a lot of questions about weight gain and what's going on there after we have exposure to mold. So first, I just wanted to start by saying that weight fluctuation during and after a significant mold exposure is very common. It is not unusual, and it is something that we see in a large percentage of our clients. There are also a number of people that lose weight and muscle mass because of the damage that mycotoxins can do to the small intestine. They can cause malabsorption there. They can also cause food allergies and sensitivities that can lead to diets that are lacking in nutrients, which can cause both weight loss and muscle mass loss, or muscle mass loss and weight gain. So just this whole picture of weight surrounding mold and mycotoxin exposure is very common, and it is something that we see in practice, both weight loss and weight gain. But I'm going to be talking about weight gain and the significant number of people that gain weight or have difficulty losing weight after mold exposure. So I think it's important to talk about the fact that toxins are stored in our fat cells. And this can be a big part of the reason why we gain weight in the first place, when we're thinking about all of the toxins and things that come with mold and all of the toxic soup that kind of ensues when we have a mold exposure as well. And I think that one thing that's kind of discounted is that leptin, our hunger hormone, also plays a role here. Leptin can actually influence glucose or sugar metabolism and insulin levels, as well as control our hunger signaling and our fat storage, which means that it plays a role in our overall toxin accumulation in the body, right? Because if it's signaling to store more fat, that's more fat cells that toxins are able to be stored in. So it really does play a role in the accumulation of toxins, whether that be mold, whether that be environmental toxins, whether that be heavy metals. We're exposed to a lot of different things during our everyday lives. So leptin, that hunger hormone, really does play a role in toxin accumulation. And increased toxicity does lead to cell membrane resistance to insulin as well, which could lead to overall an increase in insulin production, but a poor utilization of that insulin. So your body's producing a lot of insulin, but it can't actually use all of that excess insulin that it's producing because your cell membranes are resistant to it. So this leads to a higher blood sugar level, which then repeats the cycle of creating more insulin, putting more insulin into the system, not utilizing it well, having high blood sugar. And then the cycle repeats itself and continues and continues and continues, creating that insulin resistance that we see. Now, coming back to leptin, the hormone that is helping to control our feeling of hunger, it is a hormone that is produced mostly by our fat cells. And some research shows that it's produced in our stomach, our skeletal muscles, pituitary gland as well, but a majority of it is produced in our fat cells. And leptin acts on the central nervous system, and it signals the brain and the body whether or not we need to store more fat. And typically, when leptin is working well, it's going to tell our brain that we've had enough fat stored and that we don't need any more storage of fat. And it signals that feeling of fullness or satiety for the body. When we have a mycotoxin exposure, it actually causes an inflammatory cascade in the body, right? We have all of this inflammation that's happening, and that inflammatory cascade can lead to a leptin resistance. And your body thinks that it's starving, even though that's not actually the case. And in response to this false signal of starvation, your body is trying to conserve energy. So it slows down your metabolism. It tries to store as much fat as possible The fat that accumulates in our cells causes more leptin to be produced, and our cells become more resistant or blind to that leptin that we're producing. So even though there's plenty of leptin for the body to use, the body isn't sensitive to it, and it's craving more food, and it's telling your body, okay, we need to store more. We're starving, we're starving, we're starving. And we can get into this situation where with leptin resistance, with insulin resistance, with a higher fat accumulation, we just are unable to lose weight. And we just have this, inflammatory cascade and inflammatory process that just keeps getting worse. In this case, we really need to make sure that mold and other toxins are cleared out of our body, right? We need them to be cleared from our fat cells. We need them to be cleared out of the body so that we can actually address the weight issue and this leptin resistance. So now that you know kind of like what's happening on a cellular level and what's happening on a hormone level in the body, what can we actually do to address some of this weight gain, right? And I think that addressing our diet is going to be super important here. So we find in practice that a lower carb, higher protein diet is very helpful with this type of situation. So we want to get our carbs from real foods. We want to try to balance all of our meals. We want to try to have a protein rich breakfast. That's super helpful to set off the rest of your day really well. So we really do want to assess our diet and make sure that we're getting the right types of foods, the right mixtures of foods, the right combinations, not eating too many carbohydrates, not eating too much highly processed foods, and really trying not to eat too late either. So timing is really going to be important there. I think that anytime I talk on the podcast about diet, I bring up a anti-inflammatory diet just because of the way that it balances out the foods really well and the amount of antioxidants that it has. So this is the perfect type of diet to follow, making sure that we're looking at a low carb option, higher quality protein, and getting our carbs from real foods, maybe some of our more resistant carbohydrates, resistant starches there. But food is very, very important to this whole process, but it's not necessarily calories in versus calories out, right? Because if we're in this situation where our body thinks that it's starving, we may not actually be absorbing all of our food through our intestinal wall because of damage that's been done there, because of bacterial imbalances, all sorts of things. So we really want to make sure that we're eating a diet that is rich in fruits and vegetables that we can tolerate, because that will help to nourish the body, even if we feel like we're not able to lose weight. We really do need to nourish the cells and nourish the body. Exercise is also going to be important. I think that moderate exercise is recommended on a regular basis because it can help to mobilize fat and build muscle. So we want to think about including both aerobic exercise and resistance training, but we also need to be conscious of how that training feels for us as individuals, because we're all different in how we handle physical activity and how we handle training when we're going through any type of protocols to move mold out or anything like that. So really pay attention to your body, but regular physical activity, regular moderate exercise is actually really, really helpful for leptin resistance. Sleep, getting enough sleep is super, super important. We have ghrelin, another hormone that is important for regulating our appetite, that is secreted during sleep, and it can actually help to suppress leptin. So if we have a leptin resistance, having ghrelin in there, the opposite hormone, is going to be really, really helpful. So sleep is super important. It also helps to regulate the inflammatory response. We do a lot of cellular cleanup, a lot of detoxification in our sleep. So getting enough sleep is absolutely important and necessary. We want to work on cell membrane health. I kind of alluded to that a little bit with the diet, but our cell membranes are made mostly of phospholipids. So potentially supplementation may be helpful there. But what I would say is there's lots of nutrients that are involved in cellular health and cell membrane health. So make sure to talk to your provider about it. Things like CoQ10, things like NAC, things like healthy fats in your diet, all very important for cell membrane health. So definitely something that you can talk to your doctor or your provider about if you need some more help with suggestions for that. And then we want to look at other hormones as well, right? Because when we have any piece of the hormone cascade that is not working as well as it should, we want to look at the whole cascade and we want to know what's going on. So what's going on with our thyroid gland, what's going on with our pituitary, our adrenals, our sex hormones. It can be worth a look just to make sure that nothing is amiss there or that we don't need some extra support in those areas. So I really think that it's a fairly complex issue when we're thinking about weight gain post mold exposure, but a lot of it has to do with inflammation. A lot of it has to do with clearing out the toxins so that our fat cells can kind of mobilize those and that we can become a little bit less resistant to our natural hormones. So hopefully this was informational and educational for you today. Of course, if you're struggling with losing weight after mold exposure and you've tried a bunch of different things, there are a lot of different areas that we can look at. So make sure to reach out to a provider if you're working with one, or if you're not, we'd be happy to work with you on that as well. We help a lot of clients with losing weight after mold exposure. It's something that takes time to really like clear up and get to the bottom of. So reach out for help. Make sure that you are asking for help where you need it. And we'd be happy to chat with you if you need. So hopefully this was helpful for you. And if you have any other topics that you'd like for us to talk about, please drop us a message in our Instagram and we'd be happy to talk about those topics on our next podcast. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time on the Wellfuel Podcast.
As always, thanks so much for listening to the Wellfuel Podcast. We're so happy to have you. To make sure you don't miss a beat, please subscribe either on Apple or Spotify because we have episodes dropping once or more a week with tons of great content. If you want to make sure that you're up to date on everything we're doing in the business with our clients and new offers and all the things, make sure that you check us out at Isabel Smith Nutrition on Instagram and isabelsmithnutrition.com. See you guys soon.